Brooke Ellis knew, in the slow way you know an evening might change, that one small choice could make a corner of the night look different. She did not know it would split the room into two stories. The wedding had been a year in logistics and a lifetime in memory, and Brooke arrived thinking of it as a place where roles would be obvious and the script reliable. Jenna Ellis had planned the event with exactness. She had chosen the florist, negotiated the menu, and shaped the seating into familiar maps of family. Ryan Walker stood beside her as the partner she'd promised months of changes to, and together they had folded hundreds of decisions into a single evening. For Brooke, 17 and last on the list of those decisions, the night felt like something meant to be witnessed rather than authored. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. The reception unfolded with its appointed rhythms. Guests moving between plates and conversations, the brass of decorations catching low light, and tables arranged so faces met across linen. Aunt Melissa found ways to make ordinary moments into gestures with the casual authority she had honed at family gatherings, and the DJ Marcus kept the music on the edge of something like momentum. Brooke watched from near the DJ booth, one foot on a chair, a borrowed napkin in her hand, as the room shifted from dinner into a looser set of moments. When Aunt Melissa stepped to the microphone at the dance floor, Brooke assumed the action belonged to the pattern of family nights that melted into improvisation. Aunt Melissa asked the DJ for a song and then began to sing, not in a planned way, but with the ease of someone who had done this before at birthdays and barbecues. Her voice rolled into the space, and the reception adjusted to the new line, a string of tables aligning like waves around whatever act chose the center. Brooke felt the evening yield. She thought of it as permission. Later, Lily Ellis, older than Brooke by 6 years, always the one known for blurring expectations, took her turn, and Brooke read Lily's presence as confirmation that the microphone had become something shared. Lily's song landed like a private laugh turned public, and Brooke felt free to move closer to the sound. When Brooke asked DJ Marcus for Yellow by Coldplay, it was a private, small decision. A lyric had been sitting in her head, and she wanted to offer something quiet that might fold into the room's warmth. She walked onto the dance floor without rehearsing a performance, holding the microphone like a borrowed object and aligning herself with the moment she had seen Aunt Melissa and Lily claim. Jenna was on the room's central table, a figure in white who had spent the evening as a composed conductor of details. Brooke looked at Jenna as she sang, thinking the action would read as a small thing among many. She sang plainly and without flourish, steady as a person reading a page aloud at family supper. The pause after the song was not the kind of pause that signals applause. It resembled a measure of a different kind. People moved, plates shifted back into hands, and Brooke stepped away thinking the night would slide back into its larger arc. Later, when chairs scraped and the floor began to fill with coats, Jenna crossed the reception in that way she had when an agenda needed correction. She found Brooke near the coat rack and asked why she had gotten up to sing. The words came with the exactness of someone used to plans being kept. Brooke, still lodged in the logic of the evening's looseness, said that Aunt Melissa had sung, and that Lily had sung, and that she had assumed the microphone had become something anyone could use. Jenna's answer arrived like a recalibration. Both Aunt Melissa and Lily had been part of a planned surprise, songs chosen by Jenna to be specific moments in the night. They had not been spontaneous participants, but rehearsed points in the evening's choreography. The revelation made the room tilt in Brooke's memory. She pictured a line of secret decisions folded into the night where she had stepped. Jenna told her, with a phrase that would linger, that she sang badly and had not been asked. Then Jenna said something sharper. Her wedding was not about Brooke. That sentence did what rehearsed riffs often do. It redistributed people into positions and made the air between siblings calculate its distance. Brooke apologized because it seemed to lower the volume of the conflict, and because apologies sometimes work to end a moment before an audience can gather one. The apology was small and efficient. Inside, an array of other responses gathered, but were not offered. Brooke moved through the evening with a kind of hollow heat, carrying the knowledge of the misstep like an extra layer of clothing that did not belong to her. She watched family members fold their bodies into small tasks, offering rides, collecting plates, passing jackets, as if restoring function might repair the shape of the night. Days following the wedding were threaded with versions of the event that did not match Brooke's internal record. Jenna sent a group message that thanked everyone and offered a careful aftertaste of gratitude. The message contained no mention of the confrontation. Parents Karen and Daniel Ellis softened their responses when they spoke to Brooke, balancing between the instinct to comfort and the loyalty to Jenna's design for the night. Lily's initial messages were brief and apologetic, in a way that carried the distant sisters sometimes place around sore places. She said she had not known Brooke would sing, and expressed regret that the evening had unfolded awkwardly. The apologies came like glue over a small tear, not wrong, but not enough. Brooke reviewed photographs and clips, seeking an explanation in the visual evidence. There was a picture of Aunt Melissa mid-line, hair swept back and face committed to performance. There was one of Lily laughing into an ending note, and there was a mid-movement image of Brooke near the DJ table with the microphone in hand. That photograph felt like a map of the evening's pivot. In memory, the slot Jenna had intended for a particular sequence of reveals had been occupied, without permission, by something Brooke thought of as ordinary participation. The sensation was not simply embarrassment. It felt like an uncannily precise collision between personal liberty and someone else's curated moment. Brooke began to parse the difference between planned surprises and spontaneous acts. She considered how events can hold small, private mechanisms, surprises arranged and kept as sacred gestures, and how those mechanisms operate without signals for everyone else. Jenna's design had been to place certain people at certain moments. Aunt Melissa and Lily were slated to deliver lines that would fold the emotional arc in a way Jenna had chosen. But Brooke had stepped into a moment she believed to be communal. The learning was unpracticed, how to know when a social space is collectively open and when it contains private choreographies. Conversations in the family acquired a new texture. A dinner might drift toward light topics, and then find itself paused by a look that pulled memory into the room. Brooke found herself answering questions with tempered phrases. "I didn't know it was planned. I'm sorry it upset Jenna. I didn't mean to interfere." The words functioned as tools to keep the surface from cracking further. They were not, Brooke felt, true to all the complexity she carried. Sometimes relatives would make small jokes about wedding drama, as if to smooth the edges, and those jokes landed in Brooke's ears like muffled attempts at bridge work, intended to span the difference but often leaving a noticeable gap. Work and school offered a different kind of refuge, and also a mirror. Friends who had been at the wedding asked for details and interpreted events with a casualness that made the episode seem smaller. Classmates who had not been there painted it with a broader brush as typical wedding friction. Brooke resented both compressions because they flattened the surprise of the secret that had been broken and the ownership Jenna claimed over the night's moments. Each retelling shifted emphasis, and each shift reconfigured Brooke's sense of what had happened and why it mattered. Family memory, Brooke realized, is a negotiation of authorship. Who gets to set the emotional beats? Who gets to place the surprises that prompt recognition? Jenna had the right to craft a night that belonged to her. She had also asked for a privacy in those crafted moments that excluded others. Brooke understood the logic even as she felt wronged by its execution. The dichotomy was not only about the microphone or the song, it was about the authority to decide which moments would be public and which would be reserved. It was about the invisible lines that organize social spaces, and about the way an unsignaled crossing of those lines can become a grievance. As the days moved, Brooke tested the air of reconciliation in small ways. She texted Jenna a short congratulations again, a message that read like a courtesy extended rather than a request for repair. She called Lily and kept the conversation light, probing gently for a point of common ground and finding that Lily had been moving through the same uneasy terrain. When relatives gathered for brunch a week later, Brooke noticed the choreography of avoidance, topics steered away from, hands finding simple tasks, eyes that met and quickly moved. Those gatherings left Brooke with the impression that the family was practicing a version of peace that resembled a truce more than an understanding. Brooke returned to the venue to pick up a dress she had left behind and found the space stripped and folded back into neutrality. The linens were stacked, chairs tucked, and the echo of the night's design felt more like an archaeological trace than a live wound. Walking through the cleaned room, she thought about the tangible residue of plans and how choices occupy space. Someone else's rehearsal had met her choice in the middle of an arrangement. That image, the cleaned room holding evidence like a fossil, stayed with her as a way to measure what had been done and what remained. Time began to do what time often does. It made the edges less raw but did not erase the shape of the event. There would be conversations later, perhaps, where details could be unpacked, and ownership of moments negotiated with more talk than tension. For now, the family carried on with rituals and obligations, with birthdays and work days, and the small practicalities that keep life moving. Brooke kept the memory of the night close, not as a wound to be shown, but as a lesson in the contours of public moments. Her relationship with Jenna changed in ways both obvious and subtle. An inward recalibration of expectations, coupled with a patience that wanted the right time to open an honest conversation. The part of the night that had been intended as a surprise remained, in Jenna's mind, a thing she had composed and wanted to gift. And that intention was not wrong. It was deeply personal and care-filled. Brooke's presence in that sequence was not malicious, but to Jenna it was an interruption of an emotional ledger. Both truths could exist at once, which made the situation not a matter of clear rightness, but a conflict of perspectives lodged in a single evening. Brooke thought about the narrowness of social signals and the way people carry private maps into public rooms. She knew, too, that forgiveness would need time, and that some conversations cannot be speeded up without losing their potential for clarity. In the end, the song she chose remained a small, stubborn detail that had unexpectedly acquired a larger shadow. Family life, with its embedded expectations and histories, had rearranged itself around that moment, and the sisters moved forward bearing versions of the event that were not identical, but were irrevocable. The wedding continued to exist as both celebration and site of fracture, and the sisters, Brooke, Jenna, and Lily, kept living in the space where memory and intention intersected, waiting for a moment when the next conversation might close the distance, or at least make it possible to stand in the same room without avoiding one another's eyes. Tyler Reed never imagined that a simple family joke could unravel his entire week, but the trouble began the moment he opened his front door and saw a crate sitting on the porch. At first glance, it looked like something a delivery service might drop off, the kind of oversized package that held lawn equipment or bulk supplies. But as Tyler stepped closer, he noticed a faint movement inside the crate, and the shape of two small bodies huddled together. The note taped on top wasn't from any company he recognized. It was written in his cousin's handwriting, the same cousin who rarely visited without a prank tucked under his arm. Tyler didn't know it yet, but that crate would change every plan he had for the week, and maybe every assumption he had about his own family. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. Just a few minutes earlier, Tyler had been settling into what he believed would be an easygoing evening. He and his wife, Jenna, had invited a few relatives over for what they thought was a casual game night. They ordered pizza, grabbed a couple drinks, and prepared the living room as if expecting a normal gathering. But the moment they heard tires roll into the driveway, the atmosphere shifted. Jenna peeked through the front window, expecting to see friends or cousins stepping out with food or board games. Instead, she spotted only one person, their cousin Kyle, unloading something bulky from the back of his truck. The way Kyle moved told Tyler everything he needed to know. There was a kind of deliberate calm to his steps, the kind that appeared when Kyle believed he had just pulled off something hilarious. By the time Tyler reached the door, Kyle had already set the crate down and stepped back with the kind of grin a person wears when waiting for a reaction. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The grin told the whole story. Tyler's mind raced back to the conversation his family had days earlier. His father, Mark Reed, and his sisters, Allison and Brooke, had gotten together for Father's Day, a rare moment when they all occupied the same restaurant booth. During their dinner, Tyler had casually mentioned over the phone that he and Jenna had talked about getting goats one day. Not soon, not this year, but eventually. It was the kind of passing comment people made without thinking twice. Apparently, his family thought twice, then a third time, then added margaritas. Now Kyle was standing on Tyler's porch, waiting. Jenna appeared at Tyler's side, her expression a mix of curiosity and worry. When Tyler lifted the latch on the crate, the entire situation clicked into place. Inside were two small goats, both around 10 weeks old. Their ears twitched at the sudden exposure to air, and one of them shifted closer to the other. Tyler didn't know whether to laugh or shut the crate and pretend he hadn't opened it. He didn't get long to think. Kyle held out a sheet of paper, the kind used for deliveries or livestock transport. Tyler took it, confused, and as soon as he did, Kyle stepped back again. Behind him, a phone held by someone Tyler couldn't see lit the scene in a rectangular glow. Tyler knew immediately who it belonged to. His father and sisters were on a video call, watching from hundreds of miles away, waiting for the big reveal. They had turned their Father's Day dinner conversation into a full-blown plan. The realization hit Tyler with a mix of disbelief and irritation. The goats were adorable, yes, but he and Jenna had no shelter, no fencing, no pasture, not even a plan. Goats weren't the kind of animals you just dropped off like a box of leftovers. These creatures needed care and space, things Tyler didn't have ready. Jenna crouched beside the crate, gently touching the edge of the metal bars, studying the goats with a soft kind of concern. She had always been open to the idea of animals, but Tyler could tell she was already calculating the logistics in her mind. Where would they stay? What would they eat? How soon would they grow? And most importantly, why had Tyler's family thought this was a good idea? Kyle stayed only long enough to bask in the unfolding chaos. Once he confirmed that Tyler had opened the crate and processed what was inside, he shrugged, said something short and dismissive, and then headed for his truck. Within moments, he was pulling out of the driveway, leaving Tyler and Jenna alone with two goats that had no idea the trouble they were about to cause. Inside the house, Tyler set the papers on the kitchen counter and walked back to the porch, where Jenna was still staring at the goats. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the yard. The goats shifted again, one pressing its head against the metal bars, the other pawing gently at the crate floor. Tyler sighed and opened the crate door. The goats stepped out cautiously, their small hooves clicking against the wooden boards. They explored the porch with a kind of innocent curiosity, sniffing corners and lightly tapping their heads against anything new. Jenna watched them quietly. Tyler knew she wasn't angry, but she wasn't thrilled either. They brought the goats into the shop temporarily, a large structure Tyler used for projects, tools, and his car. It wasn't a barn, despite his sister Allison insisting during the video call that he already had one. The shop was clean enough, but nowhere near suitable for animals. The goats sniffed around, bumping into a toolbox and nudging the side of a workbench. The sound of a rolling wrench startled them, and they moved closer to each other. Tyler realized they couldn't stay in the shop for long. The space wasn't secure, and the goats could easily get into things they shouldn't. Jenna suggested calling their neighbors, the Collins family, who lived a short walk down the street. The Collins had raised animals before, and if anyone knew what to do in an emergency goat situation, it would be them. Tyler made the walk, the evening air cooling around him. When he explained the predicament, the Collins didn't seem surprised. They had watched Tyler's family antics for years, and nothing shocked them anymore. They offered an old wooden shed they had once used for fair pigs. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. The next few hours were spent hauling the shed to Tyler's yard, clearing space, and moving the goats into it. The shed wasn't large, but it kept them sheltered for the night. Jenna cleaned the floor, laid down straw from a neighbor's stash, and made sure the goats had water. Meanwhile, Tyler texted Allison to give her a hard time about the situation. She responded with a laughing emoji and a note saying she'd send money. She eventually sent $300, which helped Tyler purchase a temporary dog kennel to secure the shed. For a few days, the setup worked well enough. The goats had shelter, water, and a small enclosure that kept them safe. But it didn't take long for Tyler to notice something off. The goats wanted space. They paced the enclosure, bumping into the wire kennel walls, staring out at the open yard as if longing for something more. Their playful energy dimmed, and even Jenna pointed out they seemed restless. Tyler knew what that meant. He needed to build a proper pasture. Not a huge one, but something with real fencing. Something that gave the goats room to move, run, and explore. He sat at the kitchen table late one night, calculating costs for fencing materials, posts, and gates. The numbers added up quickly, far more than the $300 Allison had sent. But leaving the goats cramped wasn't an option. He used a credit card to purchase the supplies. Jenna helped him load the truck, and the two of them spent the weekend assembling the pasture along the side of their property. The goats watched from the temporary pen, their heads tilting curiously each time Tyler hammered a post or stretched wire. When the pasture was complete, Tyler opened the new gate and let them inside. The goats ran immediately, their small bodies cutting arcs across the grass. Jenna laughed softly. Tyler felt relief for the first time in days. But relief didn't erase the cost. As Tyler looked back on everything, the unexpected delivery, the scramble for shelter, the fencing expenses, he couldn't shake the sense that his family had crossed a line. He enjoyed jokes, sure, but this wasn't a rubber snake in a drawer or a prank call. These were animals with needs, costs, and responsibilities. Tyler couldn't afford to absorb all of it. One evening, after putting his kids to bed, Tyler sat down at his desk. He pulled out a blank invoice sheet from an old stack he kept for side jobs. Slowly, he began filling it out. He listed the fencing materials, the shed repairs, the posts he bought, and even the labor costs he attributed to his kids helping in the yard. The total came to just under $1,900. He addressed the envelope to his father, Mark, without adding a note. He figured the invoice itself would spark a phone call, maybe even a conversation about limits. He sealed it, walked it to the mailbox, and let the postal service take it from there. Days passed with no response. Tyler checked his phone often, expecting a call or text. Nothing came. He wondered if Mark was annoyed, offended, or simply ignoring it. He considered calling first but decided against it. If Mark wanted to talk, he would. 2 weeks later, Tyler opened his mailbox after work and found a thick envelope with his father's handwriting. Inside was a check for the full amount. No note, no message, just the check. Tyler stood on the driveway for a long moment, holding it between his fingers. The goats bleated in the distance, their new pasture giving them room to wander. Jenna walked outside, wiping her hands on a towel, and asked what was inside the envelope. Tyler showed her. She didn't say anything, just nodded and looked toward the goats. That night, Tyler placed the check on the kitchen counter, uncertain how to feel. On one hand, it solved a real financial problem. On the other, it left him wondering whether his father understood why the situation had bothered him in the first place. The family would laugh it off, he knew. They always did. But for Tyler, the joke had stretched far beyond a simple prank. Still, the goats were safe now. Their pasture was sturdy, their shed warm, and their energy bright again. And whether or not his family learned anything from the experience, Tyler had found his own quiet resolution in the way the goats settled into their new space. The chaos had slowed, replaced by something steadier, something almost peaceful. Even so, the memory of that crate on the porch lingered, a reminder of how one unexpected delivery could upheave an entire week and leave a ripple running through a family long after the laughter faded. Lily Carter never expected a single compliment to open the door to everything her family had avoided for years. It happened on an evening that started the same as any other gathering with the Taylors, longtime friends who had watched the Carter children grow up. The house smelled faintly of roasted vegetables, and the warm lights cast a soft glow across the dining room. Lily stood near the table, still adjusting to the fact that she was officially college-bound. Westbridge University had accepted her a few weeks earlier, and the reality of it floated in her mind in quiet waves. It felt surreal, especially knowing she was the first in the family to make it that far. She had thought her mother, Diane Carter, might show some enthusiasm. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. Diane had mentioned the acceptance only when others brought it up, never with the kind of pride other parents seemed to show without effort. Lily tried not to dwell on it. She told herself that just getting through the last 2 years of high school without another major blow-up had already been enough to manage. Mr. Taylor approached her with an easy smile and began asking questions about her plans. He had a daughter a few years older who had gone through a similar path, so Lily found it comforting to talk with someone who understood the excitement threaded with uncertainty. Mrs. Taylor soon joined them, placing a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder while congratulating her. She said Lily should be proud of herself, that not many teenagers showed such drive. Then she added something that caught Lily off guard. She said if she'd ever had a daughter as dedicated as Lily, she would have felt incredibly lucky. Lily felt the compliment sink in, warm and unexpected. She thanked her quietly, hoping the moment could last just a little longer. But Diane stepped into the circle of conversation almost immediately. She gave a practiced smile. "Well, she's not always such a good child," she said. "You should have seen what she put us through when she ran away at 16. Diane's voice carried that familiar tone she used whenever she wanted to shift the room's attention. It wasn't sharp, but it held a pointedness that shaped every word. The people around them paused, unsure how to respond. Diane continued, describing Lily as selfish, dramatic, difficult. She recounted the story the same way she always had, as a burden she had endured, something that made her a patient mother. The mention of running away pulled Lily back into memories she rarely revisited. The flash of it appeared so clearly that for a moment she felt 16 again. It had started on an evening much like this one. Lily had asked her mother if she could attend a study session with classmates before an upcoming test. Diane accused her of making excuses to avoid chores and insisted she stay home. The argument spiraled fast. Diane said Lily didn't appreciate anything, that she acted like she was above everyone else. Lily had tried to defend herself, explaining that the study group would help her prepare, but her mother dismissed every word. The tension escalated until Diane told her that if she didn't like the rules, she could leave. The statement wasn't shouted, it was spoken with a firmness that struck harder than volume ever could. Lily left the house that night with a backpack containing only a few clothes and her school laptop. She stayed with her friend Marissa for several days, sleeping in the guest room and pretending every morning that she wasn't waiting for someone from home to call. Michael, her middle brother, was the one who finally did. He talked to her during his lunch break from work, telling her that things at home felt off without her. He didn't ask her to apologize, he just asked her to come back so they could all breathe again. She returned the next day. Diane greeted her not with relief, but with a display of emotional exhaustion in front of neighbors and relatives, turning the narrative into something that painted Lily as the source of chaos. Over time, the story hardened into a tool Diane used whenever she wanted sympathy or validation. Back in the present, Lily saw Diane repeating the same pattern now, in front of their friends. The room's energy shifted, conversations fading as eyes drifted toward them. Lily felt an old weight rising from a place she had kept tightly sealed. She straightened her posture. The words formed before she even realized she was ready to speak them. "That's not what happened," she said. Her voice reached across the table with a calm she didn't expect. "You tell that story like it proves something about me, but you leave out everything that came before it." Diane turned toward her, startled. A flicker of disbelief crossed her face. quickly replaced by irritation. "Lily, this isn't the time," she said. Lily didn't step back. "You do this every time someone says something good about me. You twist it until you look like the one who had to put up with me. You care more about how you appear to everyone than you care about your kids." No one at the table moved. Mrs. Taylor's eyes widened slightly. Mr. Taylor placed his napkin down slowly, as if unsure whether to speak. Diane's expression tightened, not in anger at first, but in confusion, as if the script she relied on had unexpectedly changed. "I've given everything for you," Diane said. "You have no idea what I've dealt with." "And you never want to talk about what everyone else has dealt with," Lily answered. "Michael knows. Evan knows. We've all lived through things you never admit." A tension filled the space between them, not loud or dramatic, just thick and undeniable. Lily realized she wasn't shaking, wasn't unsure, wasn't shrinking. She felt grounded, maybe for the first time. She stepped back from the table, picked up her bag from the chair, and left without another word. The cool night air touched her skin as she walked down the quiet street toward home. She didn't replay the moment out of panic. She replayed it because she had never imagined she'd say those things aloud. When she got home, the house was dim. She went upstairs to her room and sat on the edge of her bed. She knew Diane would come home eventually, but she couldn't predict what version of her mother she would face: anger, coldness, or silence. Diane didn't speak to her that night. The next morning, Lily found a note on the kitchen counter. The handwriting was unmistakable. "If you think I'm such a bad mother, then I'll stop pretending to be one. From now on, you can pay rent." There was no signature, no explanation. Lily folded the note and placed it beside the fruit bowl. She stood there for a moment, letting the meaning settle. Rent wasn't the issue. It was the message behind it, one she recognized from years of watching Diane manage conflict by shifting responsibility. A soft knock came from the front door around mid-morning. When Lily opened it, she found Michael standing on the porch. He had his hands in the pockets of his jacket, his expression thoughtful. He asked if they could talk. They walked to the living room, where sunlight filtered through the curtains. Michael sat on the edge of the couch. Lily took the chair across from him. He asked what had happened at the dinner, so Lily recounted it piece by piece. She didn't embellish or soften anything. She told him exactly how the words unfolded. Michael nodded slowly. "You weren't wrong," he said. "You said what Evan and I have been saying to each other for years." Lily asked him what he meant, and he explained how Diane had always measured them through the eyes of other people. He talked about their childhood, about moments Lily didn't remember, moments when Diane reacted more to how neighbors or relatives might judge her than to what her children actually needed. He told Lily he admired her for standing up for herself, even though he knew Diane would react harshly. Then he added that he wished she had waited until they got home, not because her words were wrong, but because the fallout would be harder to manage. Later that day, Evan called. He didn't live nearby, but he had heard through Michael that something had happened. Evan said he had confronted Diane about her behavior years ago, and she responded by refusing to speak to him for days. He said Lily had walked into a cycle that wasn't going to change easily. Over the next week, the house settled into an unfamiliar quiet. Diane barely acknowledged Lily. She moved through the space with stiff formality, communicating only through notes left on the counter or the hallway table. Lily avoided pushing back, choosing instead to focus on her orientation paperwork and upcoming schedule. The tension in the house didn't escalate, but it also didn't fade. It hovered between them, waiting for one of them to address it first. Lily wasn't sure if she wanted to. She didn't know if addressing it would fix anything or simply restart the cycle. One evening, after spending the afternoon sorting her belongings, Lily walked into the backyard to clear her thoughts. The garden had always been her mother's pride. Rows of flowers lined the fence, each one carefully maintained. Lily found herself thinking about the time she was 9, when she accidentally stepped on one of the newly planted flowers while chasing Michael. Diane had pulled her aside, not to talk about what happened, but to lecture her about what the neighbors would think if they saw the plant damaged. Lily hadn't realized until much later how that moment shaped the way she understood her mother's priorities. Flashbacks surfaced quietly as she walked along the grass. She remembered the school talent show when she was in 7th grade. She had practiced a song for weeks, excited to perform. Diane had shown up late, sitting in the back row with an expression that never softened. Afterward, she told Lily she shouldn't draw too much attention to herself because people would think she was arrogant. Lily hadn't sung in a school event again. She thought about freshman year when she joined the debate team. She had been thrilled to win her first small tournament. Diane attended only the final round and spent the car ride home telling her she should be careful because people might assume she was trying to act smarter than her classmates. Each memory came with a kind of clarity she hadn't fully recognized before. The pattern had always been there. It wasn't about Lily failing or succeeding. It was about who Diane wanted to be perceived as. A strong mother, a patient mother, a mother who managed difficult children with grace. When Lily returned indoors, she found Michael sitting in the living room. He had stopped by after work. He asked how her week had been and if she had talked to Diane. Lily told him there wasn't much to say. Michael leaned back, resting his elbows on his knees. He said something that stayed with her long after he left. He told her that sometimes the hardest truth about family is recognizing that understanding doesn't always lead to change. He said he hoped things would settle eventually, but he also hoped Lily wouldn't shrink herself to make that happen. A few days later, Lily finally began packing her room. The blue suitcase she used for weekend trips sat on the floor beside her bed. She folded her clothes neatly, placing them inside layer by layer. She stacked her books in a box and organized her notebooks. With each item she packed, she felt lighter, not because she wanted to leave the house behind, but because she was moving towards something she had earned on her own. When she carried the last box downstairs, she found Diane standing by the kitchen doorway. Diane didn't speak. Lily didn't either. They stood in the same room, separated by more than silence. Everything between them felt suspended, unresolved, caught in a place where neither apology nor explanation could cover the years that had led them here. Lily stepped outside with her box, moving toward her future while the weight of that night at the tailor's house lingered in the air behind her, unchanged but no longer unspoken. Ava never imagined a simple dinner with her friends would turn into the moment that changed how she saw all of them. It began with something so small, she almost questioned whether she was overthinking it. Yet the moment kept replaying in her mind long after she drove away. She'd been looking forward to that night, something easy after a long week, something familiar. She had planned the ride, picked the restaurant, and tried to make the evening feel relaxed. The group had done this countless times, and nothing about it felt unusual until the food arrived and the night twisted in a direction she couldn't shake. Ava reached the restaurant earlier than the others because she didn't like cutting things close, especially when she was driving. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. The place wasn't fancy, but it had warm lighting, wooden tables, and enough quiet that conversations didn't drown under the sound of anything else. She picked a booth near the back wall, the one with the softest overhead light, and settled into the corner seat. A server brought water, and Ava took a moment to scroll through her phone, reminding herself that this night was supposed to be easy. Nothing complicated, nothing tense, just dinner with people she trusted. Emily was the first to show up, stepping toward the booth with her usual confidence. She tossed her jacket next to her and slid in across from Ava. Conversations with Emily were always a mix of sharp humor and a kind of bluntness Ava sometimes tried to ignore. A minute later, Jenna arrived, quiet as always, offering a small smile before sitting next to Ava. Tori followed right after, bringing her usual bubbly energy, brushing her hair behind her shoulder before joining Emily's side. The booth felt comfortably full, like it had so many times before, and for a moment, everything felt normal. The server came back, and the group skimmed their menus while trading small comments about work, weekend plans, and random stories that didn't require much thought. Ava ordered something she'd been wanting to try for weeks, something she'd seen photos of online, beautifully plated and colorful. The others picked their usual choices, nothing too elaborate, and the table settled into an easy rhythm while waiting for the meals to arrive. When the food finally came, the plates were set down one by one, the aroma spreading across the table. Ava's plate looked even better than she expected, arranged with care and symmetry, colors balanced like someone had taken their time. She reached for her phone without much thought. It wasn't new for her to take pictures of food she liked. Her phone was full of them, and in the past, her friends laughed in a way that felt friendly, not mocking. Tonight, she simply wanted one picture before she started eating. She lifted her phone slightly, framing the plate. But the moment lasted only a second. Emily reached across the table with her fork and dragged it straight through Ava's dinner. Not an accidental nudge or a playful tap. A deliberate stir that transformed the neat presentation into something messy and unrecognizable. The motion was so quick and so invasive that Ava froze. Her phone remained lifted, but every part of her stalled at once, the evening shifting from light to something she couldn't immediately name. Ava lowered her phone slightly, staring at the changed plate. She looked up, unsure whether she was supposed to laugh or react, or pretend it didn't matter. Emily leaned back casually and said it was cringe to take pictures of food. She didn't whisper it. She didn't soften the words. She tossed them out like a casual judgment, expecting everyone else to agree. But nobody said anything. Jenna stared at her napkin, folding the corner with deliberate care. Tori reached for her drink, eyes fixed on the ice as if it required her full attention. Even Emily didn't look guilty. She seemed entertained, as though she'd done something clever. Ava waited for someone to speak, for someone to say it wasn't funny, for someone to acknowledge that what Emily did was unnecessary, rude, or just out of line. But the table remained still, heavy with a silence that settled deeper than the action itself. Ava had always been the kind of person who brushed off small slights, choosing peace over confrontation. But something about this moment pressed differently on her. She had been looking forward to that meal. She had planned the night for the group. She had driven everyone there, and now she sat with a ruined plate, a dismissed hobby, and friends too uncomfortable to say anything. She asked Emily why she did it, a simple question meant to force some clarity, but Emily shrugged and repeated that taking pictures of food was embarrassing. The casual dismissal cut deeper than the act itself. It wasn't just the ruined dish, it was the way Emily treated something Ava enjoyed as if it were beneath her. The way the others silently accepted that treatment. The way Ava suddenly felt outnumbered at her own table. She swallowed her frustration, pushing her plate slightly away, unable to bring herself to eat it now. She tried to think of what to say next, whether she should attempt to laugh it off or call out the behavior, but nothing came naturally. Instead, she felt a tightening inside her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. A sense of being singled out among people she thought cared about her. The longer she sat there, the clearer it became that the moment wasn't going to repair itself. Emily had moved on, talking to Tori about something unrelated. Jenna nodded quietly, still not meeting Ava's eyes. The conversation resumed without her, leaving her outside her own evening. The shift was sharp enough that she felt herself fading from the table, as if she were simply sitting near them rather than with them. Ava reached for her bag slowly, the decision forming not out of impulse, but out of a quiet, steady resolve. She stood up, her movements controlled, not dramatic. Nobody stopped talking immediately. Only when she stepped fully away from the booth did the others look toward her. She said she was leaving, her voice steady, and before they could respond, she walked toward the door. She didn't add anything else. Didn't point fingers, didn't explain, she just left. Outside, The night air felt strangely empty. She walked to her car, unlocked it, and got in. Her hands rested on the steering wheel for a moment as she replayed the scene again and again. The ruined plate, the mocking tone, the silence from people she trusted. She started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the restaurant far behind her. The drive home felt longer than usual. Streetlights passed in soft patterns across the windshield. Ava tried to understand whether she had made the right decision or if she had overreacted. But every time she imagined staying at that table, pretending everything was fine, she felt even more certain that leaving had been the only thing she could do. When she arrived home, she went straight inside, dropped her bag on the sofa, and sat down. She opened her phone and typed a quick message asking who paid for her meal. Jenna replied that Emily had covered it. Ava immediately sent the exact amount through Zelle, not wanting anything lingering, nothing to be held against her later. Minutes later, her phone began lighting up with messages from the group chat. First Emily, then Tori, then Jenna. The tone shifted between playful irritation and defensive explanations. They said it was just a joke. They said she shouldn't have walked out. They said she shouldn't have left them there when she was the driver. They said the whole thing didn't need to be dramatic. Ava stared at the messages, feeling the strange mix of annoyance and disappointment settle deeper. It wasn't just the act itself anymore. It was how the group chose to defend it. Nobody apologized. Nobody acknowledged that the joke had been hurtful. Nobody recognized how isolating that moment at the restaurant had felt for her. Emily insisted Ava had overreacted. Tori added a comment about how everyone jokes around sometimes. Jenna said she didn't want conflict, but agreed that leaving them without a ride wasn't fair. Each message layered onto the one before, building an explanation that excused the behavior while placing the blame on Ava. She read everything twice before putting the phone down. The room felt still around her, and the weight of the night settled fully into her thoughts. She wondered if she had misunderstood the dynamic of her friendships all along. She thought about how many times she had brushed off small comments or jokes that made her uncomfortable. How often she had chosen to avoid conflict rather than risk tension. How many times she had let things slide because she wanted harmony in the group. But tonight had drawn a clear line. Ava replayed the moment of Emily's fork dragging across her plate, the deliberate disruption of something she cared about. She remembered the silence from the others, their unwillingness to stand with her. She remembered the messages afterward, the dismissal of her feelings, the insistence that she was the one in the wrong. That night didn't end dramatically. Ava didn't call anyone. She didn't send a long explanation. She didn't defend herself in the message thread. Instead, she set her phone face down and let the quiet of her home surround her. She prepared a simple dinner from leftovers, something unremarkable, and sat at her own table without worrying about whether anyone would judge her for taking a picture of her food. As the hours passed, she realized how deeply the evening had shifted her perspective. Not just of Emily, but of all of them. How quickly they had chosen convenience over loyalty. How comfortable they were ignoring her discomfort. How easily they excused behavior that hurt her. Ava didn't make any final decisions that night about her friendships, but she knew things would not go back to how they were. Something subtle had broken, something she couldn't pretend wasn't there. She sensed that the relationships she had relied on were no longer as steady or supportive as she once believed. In the days that followed, the messages slowed. Nobody asked how she really felt. Nobody apologized in a meaningful way. The group chat quieted until it felt like an empty room she no longer needed to sit in. Ava kept her distance, answering only when necessary, never starting conversations herself. She didn't avoid the memory of that dinner. Instead, she let it remind her of something she had overlooked for a long time: the importance of being surrounded by people who respected her, even in small moments. She realized that loyalty wasn't measured by how long you'd known someone, but by how they treated you when it mattered. And every time she remembered the look of her ruined plate and the silence that followed, she felt the shift inside her deepen. settling into a truth she could no longer unsee. By the end of the week, everything between Ava and her friends had changed, not through confrontation, but through absence. The distance was quiet, but it was real, spreading into the spaces where friendship used to feel natural. And so, the night that began with something as simple as dinner ended in a silent unraveling Ava never expected, leaving her with a new understanding of the people she once trusted. Kayla Morris never imagined a single phone call would pull her into the center of a family crisis she didn't ask for. She was cleaning up her small apartment after a long week at work when her phone lit up with her niece's name. 18-year-old Jenna Landry almost never called without texting first, and the moment Kayla answered, she could tell something was wrong. Jenna didn't try to hide how shaken she was. She said she couldn't stay at home another minute. She needed space, and she needed someone who would actually listen to her. Kayla told her to come over, thinking it was just another bad night in a long string of tension between Jenna and her younger sister, 16-year-old Nora Landry. The girls had been struggling with their relationship for months, but things had become heavier ever since Nora revealed she was expecting. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. Nora and her boyfriend, a 16-year-old boy named Liam Parker, had taken over nearly every room in the house. According to Jenna, they stayed up late almost every night, spreading their things across the living room, talking over everyone, and leaving messes wherever they settled. Kayla had heard bits and pieces of this from Jenna before, but that night, the story came out in a way that felt different. Jenna said she no longer felt like she belonged in her own home. She said Nora and Liam dismissed her whenever she asked for basic respect, brushing her off as though her presence was inconvenient. What bothered her most wasn't just the clutter or the lack of privacy. It was the way they spoke to her when she pushed back, as if she shouldn't expect their consideration at all. Kayla offered her the couch and told her to take a breath. She figured it would be one night, maybe two, and then things would settle. But it didn't take long to see just how deeply worn down Jenna had become. She hovered near the kitchen sink, unsure where to place her backpack. She kept apologizing for taking up space Kayla had freely offered. Kayla sat her down with something to eat, letting her explain things at her own pace. Back at Jenna's home, Erin Landry, Kayla's older sister and the girl's mother, was trying to keep the household together while working full-time. Erin believed she was doing her best, balancing her job and the chaos at home the only way she knew how. She saw Nora's situation as something that required stability, guidance, and support, and she had given Nora's boyfriend a temporary place to stay because his own family was struggling. To her, the arrangement was a gesture of compassion, but Jenna didn't see it that way. Jenna told Kayla that Liam had made himself a permanent fixture in the dining room, sleeping on an air mattress that never seemed to deflate or disappear. His games, clothes, and schoolwork were piled around it like he was settling in for good. Jenna felt cornered by his presence, especially when he reacted defensively to anything she said, even simple requests. She tried explaining it to her mother, but Erin insisted that Liam needed support, not confrontation. As Jenna relaxed enough to fall asleep on Kayla's couch that first night, Kayla figured the situation would be manageable. She sent Erin a quick message to let her know where Jenna was. Erin thanked her for telling her and didn't seem alarmed. Kayla assumed everything was under control, but the next morning, Jenna didn't want to go back. She stood near the front door with her jacket on, hesitating, saying she needed one more day. Kayla didn't push her. If anything, she felt relieved to offer Jenna a little peace. Erin texted again, saying it was fine as long as Jenna kept her updated. 2 days passed, then 3. Jenna still wasn't ready to return home. She seemed calmer, but also more certain she wasn't ready to walk back into the tension. Kayla didn't say much about it. She simply set up a comfortable spot for Jenna and gave her room to think. On the 4th day, the tone shifted. Erin called, not texting this time. She wanted Jenna home immediately. She said she had already told Jenna to come back, but Jenna had refused. Erin insisted that Kayla had to ask her to leave, so she would have no choice but to return. She said Jenna couldn't run away from conflict, and that the only way to repair things was for everyone to be under the same roof. Kayla listened quietly, holding the phone between her shoulder and ear while standing at her kitchen counter. She didn't agree with forcing Jenna into a situation that was clearly overwhelming her. Kayla believed Jenna had every right to feel safe and heard, whether she was legally an adult or still figuring out her place. She told Erin she didn't feel right pushing Jenna out, and that if Jenna needed time, she was allowed to take it. Erin didn't respond well. Over the next week, the tension between the sisters grew. Erin insisted that Kayla was blocking her from parenting her own child. She said Kayla was turning a simple household disagreement into something larger. Erin acknowledged that things at home were complicated, but she believed the only way to fix it was for Jenna to return and face the situation she had left. Kayla didn't see it that way. She believed Jenna had been quietly carrying the weight of her home's conflict for far too long, and dismissing her feelings now would only make things worse. Jenna stayed mostly in the spare room during that time, reorganizing her things and helping Kayla with small chores in return for the space. She tried not to eavesdrop on calls between the sisters, but could sense the strain. She asked Kayla directly once if she should leave. Kayla told her to consider how she felt, rather than how everyone else felt. Jenna chose to stay. Meanwhile, in Erin's house, the pressure mounted. Nora and Liam were adjusting to their new routines and responsibilities, but their frustration with Jenna's absence grew more visible. Erin believed the household was stuck in limbo, and that nothing could be resolved until Jenna returned. Her frustration built into something heavier. She called Kayla again, this time with a tone that left no room for misunderstanding. She said Kayla was enabling Jenna's avoidance. She said Kayla was making things harder for the entire family. Kayla didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply said that Jenna wasn't causing harm by needing time away, and that she wouldn't force her to leave. Erin told her she was being unreasonable. She said Kayla was overstepping, making decisions that should belong to a parent. The conversation ended without resolution. That evening, Jenna sat at the kitchen table with a notebook open in front of her. She wasn't writing anything. She explained she wasn't ready to go home, not because she wanted to avoid responsibility, but because she didn't feel respected there. She said she needed time to figure out how to stand up for herself without being confronted by hostility. Kayla believed her. Jenna had always been the kind of person who tried to maintain peace, but even she had limits. The more Jenna talked, the more Kayla realized how deeply she had internalized the household tension. Jenna explained that she felt invisible next to Nora's situation. She felt her concerns were brushed aside because they weren't dramatic enough. She felt like she didn't matter as much. Kayla knew that wasn't true, but Jenna insisted she had been treated as an afterthought for months. As the days went on, Kayla noticed Jenna starting to reclaim small parts of herself. She organized her schoolwork again. She prepared meals with Kayla. She even smiled sometimes, though it came and went. The apartment felt quieter with her in it, more settled. Kayla didn't see the harm in allowing her a safe place for a while. But Erin didn't back down. She reached out again, repeating the same arguments but with more intensity. She wanted Jenna home because she believed it was the only way to move forward. She told Kayla she was interfering, making a temporary disagreement into something bigger. Kayla stayed calm, but inside she felt conflicted. She loved her sister. She loved her niece. She didn't want to be the dividing line between them. Jenna sometimes lingered by the window during those evenings, looking out at the street like she was trying to decide whether to step back into her old life or forge a temporary new one. She didn't say much about the pressure she felt, but Kayla could see it in how long she took to choose her words. One night, Jenna finally opened up about the argument that had pushed her over the edge. She said Nora and Liam had been playing games in the living room, their voices carrying through the hallway late at night. They had woken their younger sibling, who needed rest for school the next morning. When Jenna asked them to keep it down, they dismissed her completely. They told her to stop bothering them. She repeated her request. They escalated. Suddenly, the house felt smaller than ever, and Jenna felt like she didn't belong in it. Kayla took in every word, not offering solutions, just letting Jenna speak at her own pace. She could tell this wasn't about one argument. This was about months of small moments stacking up like heavy boxes no one wanted to sort through. As the week turned into 2, Kayla wondered what the end of this situation would look like. She knew Jenna couldn't stay forever. She also knew forcing her home would undo the fragile sense of safety she had finally found. Erin, meanwhile, had reached a point where she wasn't just frustrated. She felt cornered. She insisted that the family couldn't move forward unless everyone returned to the same space. She wanted things back to the way they were, but Kayla knew things weren't the same anymore. Eventually, Jenna decided she was ready to talk to her mother, but only on her own terms. She wanted a conversation without raised voices. She wanted to explain how she felt, not defend it. Kayla supported her decision without adding pressure. She simply reminded her that she wasn't alone. The final call happened on a quiet afternoon, with Jenna pacing slowly along the hallway and Kayla organizing laundry in the next room. The words exchanged weren't dramatic or sudden. They were steady, deliberate, and long overdue. When the call ended, Jenna sat at the edge of the couch, thinking through everything she and her mother had said. She didn't rush to pack. She didn't act like the problem had vanished. She simply said she needed one more night before deciding what came next. Kayla respected that. And as the sun dipped below the rooftops outside, Kayla realized the situation wasn't about taking sides at all. It was about giving Jenna one moment in her life where she didn't feel outweighed by everything happening around her. By the time Jenna finally made her choice, the entire rhythm of their family had shifted in ways none of them expected, and nothing felt as simple as it had before. Emily Carter found a whole dumpling tucked into Ruth Bennett's sheets, and in that single instant, understood that something had shifted irreparably. It wasn't the dumpling itself so much as what it represented. An overlooked rule, a missed instruction, a small break in the chain that kept a fragile life steady. Ruth Bennett had been bedbound for years. Dementia had become part of her rhythm, shrinking the world to a few familiar textures. The worn quilt on her bed, the chipped teacup on the nightstand, the routine of meals that had to be prepared to a precise consistency. Ruth responded to few things now, but she responded to care. Emily Carter, her granddaughter, treated those routines like instructions for survival, not merely chores. Emily's mother, Denise Carter, had helped shoulder most of the responsibility, and for as long as Emily could remember, they'd managed on the assumption that careful attention would be enough. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. When Chloe Martinez came recommended by a neighbor, both Emily and Denise wanted to trust the suggestion. Chloe was 21, polite, and soft-spoken, and she seemed eager to fit into the household's steady patterns. Emily had written a clear, single-page care guide for her. Blend every meal to the specified texture, log water intake, report any changes, and give at least a day's notice if a shift couldn't be covered. The page used simple language because clarity mattered more than professionalism. There was no room for ambiguity. At the start, Chloe listened and thanked them. She tucked the paper into her bag and nodded as Emily demonstrated the blender settings. Emily remembered showing her how the food should look after processing, how a single misstep could make a solid bite dangerous for Ruth. Chloe watched with polite attention, and Emily left with the sense that she had done what she could to prevent mistakes. Small things began to accumulate. Chloe would chop instead of blend, believing smaller pieces were sufficient. She would answer questions with a minimal sentence and then wait, as though she expected a follow-up prompt before offering details. Emily found herself asking the same questions. How much water? Did she finish breakfast? How long had Ruth been awake? And receiving answers that felt rounded rather than precise. Once, Chloe canceled a shift with only 30 minutes' notice. Another time she said she had not seen a message on a phone that sat on the kitchen counter, with its screen lit by an incoming notification. Emily did not want to overreact to teen errors, but each omission added up. Emily tried to teach rather than scold. She rewrote the instruction guide into a laminated checklist and taped it to the blender. She walked Chloe through the process again, longer this time, showing the blending texture and marking the timer. Chloe nodded and practiced, hands a touch uncertain. Emily left the kitchen twice convinced the problem had been solved. The next day, the blender stood untouched. The dumpling found its way into Ruth's bed a few months after Chloe started. Emily discovered it by chance, smoothing the blanket and feeling a lump against the quilt. She picked it up, examined it, as if holding that compact piece of food might explain everything. It could have been an accident. It could have been dropped during a transfer, a fragment from a forgotten pocket. But it bore no signs of having been blended or processed. It was whole. For someone with dysphagia, whole bites could be catastrophic. That reality reframed every earlier annoyance as potential danger. Emily set the dumpling on the kitchen table and waited for Denise. When her mother descended the stairs and read the scene, the house held its breath not because of drama, but because of calculation. Denise's mistrust of strangers had always been an obstacle. She preferred the imperfect comfort of familiarity to the chaos of starting over. Yet facing the dumpling meant confronting an uncomfortable balance. Keep a person who made mistakes and hope for improvement, or accept the upheaval of seeking new help. They spoke without puncturing the surface of the problem with anger. Emily described the pattern: chopping instead of blending, the muted responses, the canceled shifts, the unreturned messages, and did so in a tone that recorded facts rather than moral judgments. Denise listened and allowed herself to acknowledge the stakes. They both knew that Ruth's life could hinge on a single overlooked detail. After that, Emily watched more closely. She watched Chloe move through the house like someone who was trying to be careful but lacked urgency. Chloe arranged medications in order, folded blankets with attention, and adjusted pillows with a gentleness that suggested caring intentions. But where intent existed, comprehension did not always follow. Tasks that required a technical understanding, timing a blend for exactly 30 seconds, testing the texture until only one smoothness remained, were the ones Chloe seemed to miss. When Emily left lists and demonstrations, Chloe watched and repeated the steps. Then, when Emily checked later, there would be inconsistencies, uneven blends, trays returned with untouched sips of water, log entries that read like guesses. One afternoon, Emily found a bowl in the sink with food that had been chopped rather than blended. Shelf-stable labels lay open beside it. A spatula had been left in the bowl. Chloe hovered by the counter, eyes on her phone, and when Emily quietly asked about the bowl, Chloe offered a small apology and said she thought the pieces looked soft enough. The word "thought" sat in Emily's head like a thin thread that threatened to snap. The missed messages continued. Emily sent a straightforward note. Had Ruth taken her meds? Did she drink enough water? A reply came hours later that said Chloe hadn't seen the message. The phone on the counter had a bright screen showing multiple alerts. Whether the delayed response was negligence, forgetfulness, or something else, Emily could not risk guessing. The pattern demanded action. Denise worried aloud about the upheaval of replacing someone. Interviews, background checks, telling a person they no longer fit. Those things felt like an emotional investiture Denise wasn't eager to make again. She loved her mother and feared making a mistake that would leave them exposed while they searched for a better option. Emily understood the reluctance, but her convictions about safety pushed at the edges of that fear. It wasn't just procedural failures. There was a human dimension that made decisions harder. Chloe smiled in ways that suggested she wanted to learn. She brought small, thoughtful items, an extra blanket one evening, a cup of tea another, and she never left with a visible attitude. She seemed sincere. The truth was that unreliability and care can coexist, and that contradiction made Emily's choices messier. She wanted to believe in Chloe's capacity to improve, but Ruth's safety did not allow indefinite time for improvement. A week after the dumpling, Emily walked into the kitchen to find Chloe making breakfast. The blender lid sat beside the appliance, untouched. Food on the chopping board looked manageable to an untrained eye, but dangerous to anyone who knew Ruth's limitations. Chloe started spooning the mixture into a bowl, not noticing the inconsistent texture. Emily did not announce herself. She reached for the bowl, turned it into the processor, and blended the meal until its texture matched the laminated checklist on the blender. Chloe turned when Emily finished, a look of startled confusion on her face. She thanked Emily in a low voice and resumed her duties, but the exchange was small consolation for a problem with broader consequences. Emily recognized that her intervention might spare Ruth immediate risk, but it did not erase the pattern. It only highlighted the point that the household could not be a training ground for someone whose learning curve threatened another person's well-being. Emily spoke with Denise again, this time in language free from supposition. She listed concrete incidents, dates, and the specific consequences they could cause. They both traced the timeline like professionals building a case: the initial instruction sheet, the repeated mistakes, the canceled shifts, the dumpling. Denise gathered the strength to acknowledge that comfort could not outrank safety. She agreed with Emily that change had to happen. They did not want to cause Chloe harm, only to protect Ruth. But the act of protection required clarity. Emily drafted a note, calm, simple, and firm, stating that they would be moving in a different direction with care. She asked Denise to read it, and Denise sat for a long moment before signing her approval. They decided together that they would offer Chloe a final conversation in person before ending the arrangement, an exchange founded in courtesy even amid necessity. When they told Chloe, she met the news with an expression that contained confusion and something close to resignation. She said she was sorry, that she had wanted to do better, and that she had not realized the impact of her mistakes. Her voice held a softness that made the moment uneasy. She packed a small bag that afternoon and left without drama. The house felt altered by her absence more, because her presence had been woven into daily life than because it had been welcomed without reservation. In the days that followed, Emily carried unsolved tension like a small, steady weight. They began interviewing replacements, reviewing resumes, asking specific, practical questions about experience with dysphagia, with timed blending, with home routines. The process felt transactional and intimate at once. Transactional in the way they asked precise questions about procedure, and intimate in the way they invited strangers into the private space where Ruth lived. Ruth, for her part, continued to exist within the boundaries of her own perception. She accepted food, slept in measured stretches, and responded to gestures more than words. Her life did not change shape because of staffing shifts. That constancy made Emily's decisions both clearer and lonelier. It meant that any misstep could be the thing that altered Ruth's small world forever. As they scheduled interviews, Emily took time to reorganize the lists taped to the blender, to clean the kitchen counters, to write down the 3 things that any candidate absolutely needed to do on their first day. She left the laminated checklist where it would be visible to anyone who walked into the kitchen. The process made her feel less at sea. One afternoon, after a long screening call with a potential caregiver, Emily sat on the couch and allowed herself to consider the complexity of what they had done. Hiring and firing were not simply administrative tasks, they were choices that affected dignity and safety in equal measure. She thought about Chloe, her missteps, and her good intentions, and felt a complicated knot of sympathy and resolve. The household moved forward with a different rhythm. Task lists were clearer, shift overlaps were rearranged to guarantee a smoother handoff, and every candidate they interviewed was tested against the simple measure that had failed before. Would they blend the food to the exact texture required without prompting? When the new caregiver arrived, she brought steady hands and a look that matched the practical intensity Emily had been trying to protect for months. She read the laminated checklist like an instruction manual, timed a blend to the second, and logged water intake with the precision of someone who had been taught and had also learned to value structure. Ruth accepted her with the small indifference of someone whose world had condensed to immediate comforts. Denise exhaled in a way Emily recognized as relief. Yet relief came with a residue of something else, an awareness that choices had been made, small and large, that rearranged their lives. Emily found herself returning to the napkin where the dumpling had once rested, tracing its absence like a small proof that they had acted. She did not imagine the path forward would be trouble-free, only that they had removed one risk from the long list they managed daily. On a cool evening, Emily went to Ruth's room and smoothed the blanket until its fold lay straight and calm. She checked the side table, adjusted a pillow, and folded the laminated checklist in half to slip into her pocket. She did not say a prayer or make a speech. She simply sat for a moment and watched the slow measures that kept Ruth steady, the small rituals that preserved trust in people who cared. The decisions had been difficult, the process exacting and personal. But when Emily rose and moved toward the hallway, she carried with her a precise knowledge that some choices are made not to punish, but to secure, and that once those choices are enacted, life reroutes itself around them. The house was different now, calibrated to a standard they would not compromise. She closed the door behind her and felt the hours ahead settle into a new arrangement, one shaped by the dumpling and the decisions it forced, and by the awareness that every ordinary task could be the one that mattered most. Thanks for watching Story Frame. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more updates. See you in the next video.